Please welcome to the stage Anita McBride, American University.
Good afternoon. As a member of Concordia's Leadership Council and chair of the awards committee, I have the privilege of overseeing the annual nominations and award selection process. I've been on Concordia's Leadership Council since its founding in 2011, and I want to acknowledge the extraordinary vision and leadership of Concordia's founders, Matt Swift and Nick Logothetis. Matt and Nick asked the Leadership Council 9 years ago to establish criteria for a Concordia Leadership Award. I enthusiastically supported that idea and was delighted to take on the responsibility to chair the committee, which proves the adage, if you speak up, you better step up. And I'm honored to be here today to open the awards ceremony on behalf of our committee. The Concordia Leadership Award recognizes global leaders within the public and private sectors and civil society who have made transformative contributions in their field and inspired others through their proven ability to turn vision into impact. The process for evaluating nominees and making a selection for our annual Leadership Award is always a robust and thorough exercise. Our distinguished 2024 Concordia Leadership Awardees exemplify the transformative power of visionary leadership. From Dr. Albert Bourla's unwavering dedication as CEO of Pfizer to improving human health and significantly increasing research and development investments in innovative new therapies. To President of Ford Foundation Darren Walker's transformative philanthropy to tackle disparities and raise standards of living for more and more people. And to NATO Secretary General, His Excellency Jens Stoltenberg's steadfast commitment to fortifying and modernizing vital international security partnerships in the face of unprecedented challenges. We all have so much to learn from each of our honorees and their remarkable achievements and inspiring commitment to making the world a healthier, more prosperous, and more secure place for all of us. I would now like to introduce my distinguished colleague and fellow Leadership Council member, Bart Friedman, who nominated Darren Walker for the Civil Society Award. Bart has spent 50 years at the venerable Wall Street firm Cahill Gordon, where he has held almost every leadership position at the firm. Bart serves on numerous public boards, guiding some of the world's largest companies in their most critical challenges. He has also devoted his time to guiding nonprofit institutions which are aligned with his passions and interests, including the Council on Foreign Relations, the Brookings Institution, the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, the Juilliard School, and most currently, the World Monuments Fund, among others. So it's my distinct pleasure to turn the podium over to Bart as he presents the Civil Society Award.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anita. Thank you for that kind introduction. I'm here with the delicious task of giving the award to someone I've known for over 20 years. I first met Darren when he was then the vice president and a key figure at the Rockefeller Foundation, working with our mutual dear friend, Joan Chigugawa. During his farewell speech at Rockefeller in 2010, I can still remember his electrifying, thoughtful, reflectful, and impressive call out for what a foundation should be and should be able to do. When Darren joined Ford, he redefined the foundation, especially after his election as president at the foundation in 2013, And in the process, more broadly, he redefined philanthropy in general as practiced by the many foundations and individuals that followed his lead. A commitment to social justice, his astonishing and well-received first out-of-the-box $1 billion earmarked social bond to strengthen and stabilize nonprofit institutions affected by COVID. His rescue, and that's not too strong of a word, of the cultural capital of Detroit, the Detroit Museum of the Arts, and his commitment to ensuring an endowment which would do no harm in its investments. Darren absolutely redefined what a foundation could and should be, as he promised in 2010 at his farewell speech at Rockefeller. I have gotten to know Darren better since we both serve on the Lincoln Center board, and he and my wife and I also mentor a mutual friend, Andrea Acci, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Commitment and community, warmth and wit, intelligence and intensity, those are the words that really help define Darren. I'm so pleased to present him with the Concordia Leadership Award and invite him onto the stage for a conversation with his dear friend and co-founder of Vow for Girls, Mabel Oranje.
Take a photo.
Photo shoot.
Here.
Looking for the photog.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Take care.
We'll take it for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Want to take it or I'll take it?
No, you take it.
Good afternoon. My name is Mabel van Oranje, and I'm really happy to have a conversation with you, Darren, philanthropist, thought leader, author, innovator, risk taker, lover of the arts, and my friend. Let us start. We'll talk a little bit about your philanthropy, and we'll talk a bit about your leadership, if that's okay. But I want to start at the beginning, because I know that your youth, your upbringing has had a huge impact on the way you live life, what you find important in your leadership. I'm not sure that everybody is familiar with your background story, so would you mind sharing a little bit how you grew up and how that has formed you?
Well, thank you, Mabel. It's a huge honor to receive this recognition from Concordia. I'm just enormously grateful. I'm very lucky because I grew up in a country that believed that poor little boys like me, born in a charity hospital to a single mother, who lived in a little shotgun house on a dirt road in rural East Texas, could dream. I was given permission to dream. In fact, I was encouraged to dream. And that encouragement manifests in so many ways. It certainly manifests for me in the spring of 1965 when a woman appeared on the road where we lived, and she came to the porch of our little house, and she told my mother about a new government program that President Johnson was going to implement called Head Start, and if I wanted to be in the inaugural class of Head Start in the summer of 1965. And I was very, very lucky because that really began my journey with words and literature and languages, and I just feel such a debt of gratitude to that program and also to the other encouragement I received. I proudly say I am a product of a public education system. I have never had a day of private education in my life, all the way from Head Start through law school in Austin, Texas. I benefited from a very affordable, high-quality education. And that, in so many ways, made it possible for me to get on that great American social mobility escalator that I rode as far as I could. And again, I every day feel incredibly lucky and grateful to have been born in this country. I know that my journey in some ways has been improbable, but I also know that it couldn't have happened in any other place in the world. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm naive. That doesn't mean that while I'm incredibly grateful and positive and optimistic about my country, that there are not days when I don't feel rage and angry about some of the things that I see that happen to people who are often the most dispossessed in our society, in the communities that are most often left out and left behind. And so that's the work that we do at the Ford Foundation.
Darren, you talk about anger and about this sense of injustice that I think drives a lot of you. And you wrote about it in your book, From Generosity to Justice. And you talk about how we need to watch out when we do philanthropy, when we do activities to try to change the world. We shouldn't just focus on the symptoms, which might give us a kind of a feeling of doing good and make us sleep quietly at night, but that we actually need to go after the underlying structural challenges. And the fact that it, I think in your country, is nowadays much harder for young disadvantaged children to have the route the opportunities that you had. So I think you've been then using that in order to support transformative ideas, transformative institutions, transformative individuals. Can you talk a little bit about that feeling of like, we need to really go and support the root causes and change the basis of inequality?
Well, when my friend Bart Friedman was talking about my experience at Rockefeller, one of the things that happens when you come into this world of philanthropy, which I, of course, had no idea about, is that you learn who are the elders. And in the case of American philanthropy, it really started with Andrew Carnegie, who wrote his seminal essay in 1889, The Gospel of Wealth, in which he said that the work of wealthy men like him and Rockefeller and Mellon and Morgan was to give back and to be generous and to provide resources to those poor who were deserving. Andrew Carnegie, he coined the term giving back. He also legitimized the idea that some of the poor are unworthy of charity because they are lazy, they have bad habits, et cetera. But Andrew Carnegie felt that inequality, racism, these things were normative. And the work of philanthropy was not directed at those, what I believe are root causes. When I came upon a speech that Martin Luther King gave just a few weeks before he was murdered in 1968, he said the following: "Philanthropy is commendable, but it should not allow the philanthropist to overlook the economic injustice which makes philanthropy necessary." And so what Dr. King was saying was something different. What Carnegie said was, let's be generous, let's be altruistic, let's ameliorate. What Dr. King was saying was, it's not just about charity and generosity. The work of philanthropy must be about dignity and justice. And that's a harder bar, because so much of philanthropy is about the donor. We feel good when we give. We feel that we are helping people. And so there is a real rush that you get from that. But the question is really, it's not about us. It's about how are we helping the people we profess to want to help. And sometimes that requires an interrogation of our own practices, our own policies. I mean, when Bart gave the example of what we had to do at Ford, that was very, very challenging. I mean, we are one of the largest funders of ending the movement to build private prisons. because sadly, there's a lot of money to be made in private prisons, and there's a massive industry in this country. And so in our grant-making program, we were working to end this scourge. In our investment office, we were investing in prisons. So think about that. And so this is my point about interrogating. We felt very good about ourselves at the Ford Foundation. But then when we hold the mirror up and say, are you really living your values? Do you really believe in this idea of social impact investing? All right, show me the money. And so we're very good about the rhetoric in philanthropy. We can manufacture rhetoric better than any industry. And it is, though, not the case that we always live up to that. And personally, I don't have any higher moral ground than anyone else. I'm challenged in the same way. But I do think we have to be open to that engagement. And so much of the philanthropy and the work that we've done through my book, through from generosity to justice, through our looking at how change happens, how we sustain change. And you raised the issue of what I call the 3 I's, investing in ideas, individuals, institutions. We invest in the I's because that's what sustains change. Because institutions are essential in a democracy like ours, particularly for a foundation focused on issues of social justice. Because the issues of justice in a pluralistic, diverse democracy with our history is full of contestation that requires a commitment long term, and that is a different kind of philanthropy than we did at the Rockefeller Foundation, where we were working on vaccines. When you work on a vaccine, when we were supporting antiretrovirals for HIV, there were labs. Every quarter, there were experiments and progress, and that progress actually went all the way to Dr. David Ho, who indeed developed the first serious effective antiretroviral therapy. Well, the lab actually at some point was able to close. They were meant to develop an antiretroviral, and they did that. So Rockefeller Foundation could take those dollars and invest them in something else. All right, well, we invest in justice. And there is no finish line. And so we have been investing in women's reproductive freedom for 50 years. At any moment, period, 10 years ago, we could have declared victory. But that's not the way justice works in our society. You can go back, all the way back to the starting line because of the context that we're in. And so you need institutions because Planned Parenthood needs to be there, come hell or high water, because there will be a time when we make progress again, and there is likely to be a time when there will be a backlash to that progress.
But Darren, I think one of the things I admire in you is what you just showed, the willingness to be critical, self-critical. You're open-minded, looking at things, how they can be imperfect. Another thing that I've really admired is your appetite for risk-taking, for trying new things. And I've personally experienced that in the almost 15 years that I've been working with you on ending child marriage, which affects 12 million girls every year. And we have worked together in creation of a big global partnership, in a fund that can spend money locally. And our last baby, if I may call it that way, is Vow for Girls, which is an effort to make sure that everybody who wants to contribute to this effort to keep girls in school, make sure that they can live the lives they want to live, can contribute by turning weddings, celebrations of love into potential fundraisers through Vow for Girls. Now, I would love to hear a bit about what made you decide to say, okay, yes, we're going to at the Ford Foundation work on ending child marriage. And also, what lessons do you have for us in terms of saying, okay, here's a new idea. It might work, it might not work, but if we don't test it, it will definitely fail. What is that appetite for risk-taking?
Well, there's no doubt that we don't do enough risk-taking. I've worked in the private sector, I ran a nonprofit, I worked at a big bank, a big law firm, where you are constrained by the demands of clients, by the demand of stakeholders in the community. When you're in a foundation, you don't have any demand. Just let's be honest, people. There's no one who's telling you that if you don't make better widgets, they're going to go and buy the widgets of a competitor and you're going to go out of business. We're not going out of business. And so the impetus has to be self-generated. It has to be, and the urgency has to come from the board, from the CEO, and the ability to talk about risk is really critical to that, because there is no other sector that has more available risk capital than philanthropy. And unfortunately, we leave so much of it on the table. And we leave it on the table in part because I was acknowledging at the Bloomberg Philanthropies today an education program that they have that's a really promising idea. Some of it has worked, some of it hasn't. But what I loved about what Bloomberg did was they spoke with the Wall Street Journal, and they talked very transparently about what worked and what doesn't work in that program. Not enough of us do that. And why don't we do it? Well, we don't want to do it because we don't want to be embarrassed that we spent $40 million on an initiative that didn't work. Well, of course, initiatives don't work. And yes, you spend $40 million, you spend lots more money than that. And why wouldn't you tell the story of what worked and what didn't work? And so we need to be able to be humble and be able to say, we don't have all the answers. Another reason we don't do it is because we worry that so much that we have to keep the endowment intact. We do. I'm a believer. I'm a believer in all sorts of philanthropy. If I'm on the board of a spin down, we're spending, $3.5 billion in 10 years because the donor wants that done. That's great. That donor, the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, we were set up in perpetuity. That is great too. But we can't be slaves to the idea that every generation we have to plan our endowment to the basis point to allow us for the next 50 years to have, in the case of Ford, $16 billion. Sometimes you have to say, and this is the case I've made to my board, yes, we are spending 6% in our payout, but we need to spend more. And we need to spend more because we're in the middle of a pandemic. And to have a conversation in the middle of a pandemic about are we going to spend 5.6% or 5.9% is just an absurdity. And so that was my position. And fortunately, we've got a great board at Ford, and we figured out a way to double our grant making and add $1 billion to grants in those 2 years. I think that we just need to be more creative, and we need to worry less about failure and worry more about impact.
Good point. Darren, it's widely known that you're going to be leaving the Ford Foundation at some point in the coming year plus. Yes. Normally, when people arrive in new jobs, they make an enormous effort to arrive well, and they seem to spend a whole less effort when they depart from jobs. You seem to be taking your transition out of the Ford Foundation incredibly serious, and I have the feeling you're in a great way planning it. Can you tell us some secrets about what you think is a good transition out of any position of great responsibility?
Well, I can tell you about transitions in foundations, which are unfortunately too often not successful. And in my case, I'm looking forward to experiencing, hopefully, a positive one. I've been president now for 11 years. It's time to go. These jobs are intoxicating, and they can also be corrupting, because you can actually begin to believe all of the things that people tell you on a daily basis about how smart you are, how intelligent you are, I mean, you will never have a bad meal. You will never not be the first person called on in a panel or on a, and you can actually begin to conflate that with who you are. And you know, when the Times ran the piece about my retirement, I mean, it opened with the story of my assistant running into my office and saying, you know, President Obama wants to have lunch with you at the White House. This is so exciting. And she was quite animated, and I had to say, calm down. President Obama does not want to have lunch with me. He wants to have lunch with the president of the Ford Foundation. He actually couldn't care less about Darren Walker. He has a lot of other, but he wants to have lunch with the president of the Ford Foundation, and the president of the Ford Foundation will go to Washington and have lunch with him. And that, it's really important to understand that. And it's also, for me, you always want to leave the party before the host wants you to leave. You know, and George Washington was right. Serve your time and get out. And I think part of the challenge is it's just so alluring to stay in the position. And I love, you know, I love getting awards and going to galas and making speeches. And it's all on a daily, I mean, this is what I do every day, as you know. I mean, we're dear friends, and you know my schedule, and you know I go to London and get an award at the Royal Academy. I go to Paris and go to the Louvre and get an award at the Louvre. I mean, you know, yeah, that's what happens when you're president of the Ford Foundation, but that's not reality. And I just think it's time for me to let someone else, and you know, my board chair said at the all staff when we announced that I was leaving, it's going to be very hard to fill Darren's shoes. And I corrected him for the last time. I said, Darren is taking his shoes with him. He is actually, you board have to find a new pair of shoes or pumps that are right for the future of the Ford Foundation. 12 years ago, y'all thought my shoes were right. Thank you, I think. But we need some new shoes. And for me, I feel a sense of satisfaction and gratitude because every day, I mean, as you know, you at the Ford Foundation, every day to walk into the doors of that place, it's magical.
Amazing.
It's magical.
We're almost running out of time. By the way, you know that once you're no longer the president, you're still my friend Darren. I'm very happy about that. But we're going to squeeze in one quick question to end this, because I think a lot of people here in this room are inspired, are already making a difference in the world, might want to make a difference in the world. What's your piece of advice for people who want to leave more behind than just happy children?
No, I think leaving behind happy children is a big deal, just to be clear. I also think...
I agree, I know.
Right? I also think for so many of us, it is so easy on any given day, at least I'm projecting my own, to feel dejected, depressed, demoralized, disgusted. But there are so many reasons for hope. There are so many reasons for hope. There are extraordinary people doing remarkable things in this country and in the world that give me reasons for hope. And it's why I like doing site visits, even though they're, now that I'm president, kind of orchestrated. But I like doing commencements and being with young people, because when you have that experience and you meet the woman that you have brought to life, these young girls who have figured out a way to get out of a situation that you or I cannot imagine, being married off at 10 years old. And we meet these girls, and you see they're in a slum, they're in a rural village, and they are hopeful. They're hopeful. And you think, you know, as I get back to my apartment on the east side and I'm, you know, mad that the internet is out or something, and being a brat, you just think to yourself, there are these people in the world who have none of our privileges. And they're not whining. They're not griping. They're not catty and unhappy. They are hopeful. So shame on us if we can't find reasons for hope. We're not looking very far.
No. And thanks to Vow for Girls, we now have an opportunity for all of you to help reach these goals. Anyway, Darren, thank you so much.
Dear.
I'm sorry, we would have liked to go on for 2 hours, but
Thank you.
thank you.